I'm going to draw a few Western medical correlates and try to compare Western medicine to Eastern medicine a little bit tonight so you can understand what I'm talking about, which is kind of a dangerous thing to do because there isn't really very good Western medical explanations for Chinese concepts. But I'm going to try so we can all kind of stay on the same page. If we want to understand what kidney yang deficiency looks like, we're probably talking about adrenal exhaustion. So as most of us know, the adrenals are these little glands, the adrenal cortex sits on top of your kidneys. And guess what they're responsible for? Stress hormones, right? Fight or flight stuff. Bronchodilation, vasodilation. The adrenals are very important and used a lot by endurance athletes. Well, I've been working with Mike for a little while, like I said, a couple of years. And there's another interesting piece that I know about him. Being a water type, he's an extremely hard worker. He puts in long hours at his job. But the key is he stands on his feet a lot. And we know, looking at the Chinese medical textbooks, that standing injures the kidneys. It says it very directly. Standing injures the kidneys. And I'm going to take it a couple steps farther and say that incorrect standing injures the kidneys even more. And Mike, I've seen him stand. He doesn't know how to stand. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. So there's a few pieces of advice here, a few take-home pieces. One, the wind. We want to avoid the wind. Two, standing. Right? If you're an athlete, if you're an endurance athlete, which a lot of us are in this room, if you have an opportunity to sit down, sit down. If you have an opportunity at work to sit down without getting in trouble, sit down. If you're going to stand, you want to stand correctly, and again, we're going to talk about that more. But the most important thing is something that Mike didn't do. And I know this because, and a lot of you know this, you've been in my practice, Mike didn't use ice when he got hurt. And this really helped his condition. Because if we look at the ancient Chinese textbooks and we look closely at the translation, the Chinese say that something like ice is good for dead people and margaritas. And that's about it. We don't really use ice on injuries. And it makes sense. You can explain this to a 5-year-old why this makes sense. And if there are any physical therapists in the room, you can grill me afterwards and we can kind of have a discussion about why this is true. But ice freezes things. It makes things slow down. If we look at an injury site, what happens at an injury site generally, and not in Mike's case so much, but any injury on your body is going to swell. Swelling is a natural process. Your body will swell. No matter what you do, if you have a bad injury, there's not a single one of us in this room that won't swell. If you freeze that swelling, does the swelling go down? It does. But guess what happens as soon as you take the ice off? It swells up again. And then you ice it and it goes down. And then you take the ice off and it swells up again. The poor body has got to swell. So the Chinese had this figured out quite some time ago, maybe a couple thousand years ago, and they did have access to ice. There was a lot of freezing areas in China. But they figured out that if you assist the body's natural tendency to swell, you go ahead and get it over with by adding heat. You will get through that part of the injury process, and the swelling will go down much faster. And if you don't think that this works, go ahead and, don't take my word for it. Next time you have a minor injury, a little sprain or whatnot, add heat instead of ice and see what happens. So that's the third takeaway piece from our patient Mike. That's really, really important. Matter of fact, forget most of what I say tonight. If you get injured, try heat instead of ice. It really does make a huge difference, and it will shorten your recovery time. I have a patient actually, I've got a couple in here that I recognize that have had recent injuries that we've used heat on. I had one patient, she had a stage, I think they would call it a stage 3 sprain, a lot of swelling, a lot of black and blue. Definitely something you'd think she'd be off her feet for 2 or 3 weeks. Well, she's been in my practice quite some time. She didn't use ice. She used heat. She came in and we soaked it in some hot herbs that I had ready for her, some anti-inflammatory herbs. As soon as she comes out of the heat, the swelling was gone almost completely, and the bruising was gone completely. What was black and blue was now nice and pink and red. And we did some other treatments. We pulled some fluids out and set the bones and set her straight. And she was actually running 4 days later. So it was great to see this, what would have been a 3-week injury, turn into a very short process by using heat. So enough said about that. By the time we get Mike up off the table, I give him a piece of advice. He's pretty much done with the treatment. We do a little bit more massage. And I give him a piece of advice. I say, Mike, I want you to pretend like you're not injured. I want you to just get off the table. You can take your time, go as slow as you want, but I don't want you to tell your brain that you have to guard your back. And so he takes my advice, and he gets up slowly, and he's able to stand up. And we, again, employ that complex diagnostic tool of bend over and touch your toes. And he gets about halfway down, and he says, oh, yeah, it's still a little sore, but his back's not locked up anymore. And it was really simple. The whole treatment took about 30 minutes, a little bit of heat, a little bit of acupuncture, and he was on his way. But the last take-home piece from Mike is something I see all the time that I think is very important to bring up to all of you. If you have an injury and you're lucky enough for whatever treatment you used, you've gotten over your injury, tell your brain to knock it off. This is a big one. And it's really, really hard to do. Because if you're injured, you will have a hardwired set of rules that go from your brain to the injury site. And sometimes it stays there for years. I know people who are career back pain people. It's what they do. It's like their identity. And I have a feeling that they have this wiring in their brain that they haven't let go of. The back pain is real, but the brain's telling the back to hurt. So, and I'm not just referring to back pain. It can be any kind of pain. It can be chronic shoulder pain, knee pain, ankle pain, wrist pain. It doesn't matter. If you have had an opportunity to heal, and let's say you've done all the diagnostic imaging in Western medicine, you have your x-rays and your MRIs, everybody says, look, you're fine. Then let it go. Allow yourself maybe just 24 hours. And if you have to have a conversation with your brain and tell yourself to knock it off, tell yourself to knock it off. You'll be amazed that if you can get that volume knob to turn down just 2 clicks, you'll be amazed at how far you can get and how easily you can get over these conditions by using your mind. So that's Mike. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Paula, because she's not here or anywhere. Paula's a 64-year-old runner, and she's been running for about 25 years, since her early 40s. And she spent a lot of time outside, a lot of time training outside, and you can tell, she looks like a handbag, a nice handbag, like a Gucci, a smooth leather, smooth. And there's not a drip of fat on this woman. She's absolutely ripped. She's just this lean bag of sinews and muscles. And immediately when I meet her, I realize she's a wood type. And it's easy to tell the wood types because they're real to the point, they're relatively aggressive, and she started racing me to the clinic like this. She started racing and she beat me to the door. I usually like to get the door for folks to the clinic, but she just walked right in and sat down. And as soon as she sat down, she said, "My gut hurts. My gut hurts. I can't eat. Every time I eat, I get bloated." She has that shout to her voice, which is also a wood type characteristic. "Every time I eat, I bloat. And I'm burping a lot. And when I burp, I get acid." And she says, "Can you help me?" And she starts walking over to the table to sit down. And I said, "Well, yeah, probably, but have a seat. Let's get some more information here." So start asking her basic questions as we do in Chinese medicine. Just the basic stuff. What's your diet like? What do you eat? How much are you drinking? She says, "I drink a lot. I drink water all day long. I'm always drinking water." I say, "Well, that's really interesting. How much water are you drinking?" "Oh, at least 2 or 3 gallons of water a day." You'd be surprised, people. You would be surprised. Now, a lot of us know that you can't really drink that much water and be safe, There's a condition called delusional hyponatremia. You can wash out your electrolyte stores, and if that happens, all hell breaks loose. There's a lot worse things than bad performance. However, in her case, it was definitely affecting her digestion, and she likes to drink a lot, I found out, when she races. When she's doing her running races, she stops at every aid station and just pounds water, thinking it's going to help her running, and it's going to help her result. And so I explained to her, look, you shouldn't drink more than 24 ounces an hour, no matter how hot it is. And this is the perk up, kind of put your antenna up, listen to me at this point. 24 ounces of water an hour is your maximum amount that you are allowed. I don't care how big you are, I don't care how hot it is. If you drink more than that, you're going to affect your digestion, number one. And you do stand the chance of having this delusional hyponatremia. You wash out your salts, your electrolyte stores, and there's all kinds of things that can happen. Cramping and fatigue and bloating and so on and so forth. So this is kind of important, and not something we need to harp on too much, because there's other pieces to Paula which are interesting and helpful to know. I asked Paula about her diet, and let me show you all what her diet looks like. And some of you are going to resonate with this. You're going to go, "Wait a minute, that's what I ate for breakfast. Hang on a second."